All right, good morning. It is the morning of the event and time to get ready. So last night I went ahead and opened up all of the eyelets or buttonholes. Some people like to use seam rippers. I like to use an X-Acto knife. And very carefully though, because it's dangerous both for yourself and it's kind of sometimes easy if you're doing a little too much pressure to cut through your buttonholes that you just spent so much time making. So, but anyway, here we are. It's looking pretty darn good. I also finished up this portion of the seam from up the front where we're going from a standard, seam allowance to where the lacing meets right here. And oftentimes when I'm doing this with buttons, the transition is going from that seam to a button layer. And what I'll do with that is I just leave it open, I pull it tight, and then while I'm on the ironing board or sometimes even on my person, I will just wiggle and make those adjustments, and it blends in pretty easily, going from the seam allowance to the covered buttons. And then I just hand whip it and hand whip stitch it in place. So that works really well. For this one, because we're going from seam allowance to lacing being just butted up against each other, what I did was I just, across the 4 inches that's remaining here, I just gradually decreased my seam allowance. And so then by the end it was just teeny tiny and was ready for that the lacing butting up against each other, and then just iron it flat, and it makes for a really nice smooth transition from your seam allowance to the bottom of your lacing. For the bottom of the lacing, this is a loose, this is a loose set cord I made the last week or so. I like to just tie it in place, and I keep it tied. And then I usually keep it mostly laced. And then somewhere I once bought points, the actual metal tips, kind of like the ends of shoelaces, to go on my lacing cord. I can't find them at all after I bought them, so I need to get new ones. But what I do sometimes, which is also equally dangerous, so don't do this at home, is I use a tapestry needle and I thread the end of my lacing through that, tie a little knot, and so this is permanently here, and that just acts as a guide for lacing it, because sometimes getting it through those laces is really annoying. And if your cord is long enough, unlike this one, you can leave all of your laces pre-laced. And then you just zipper it up, and it's really kind of fun that way and handy. But since I haven't done that with this, I'm going to be lacing, and so just take it, and we're doing a spiral lacing, so in at the bottom lower eyelet and at the top. And so spiral lacing you see a lot, especially in the Duc de Berry image that I am going for replicating. As we get up to some of the more structural elements, like around the bosom, the lacing can get a little bit more, requires a bit more finesse to get it to lay just quite the way that you want it. But eventually you will get it. And so we just can continue up, and then we'll kind of scrudge around some. All right, and we are all laced up. Ta-da! And we're all kind of snuggled in place. Sometimes there's a little bit of manual adjusting that needs to occur to get yourself situated within the fit of the gown, which is nice because it helps kind of keep that smooth silhouette line and everything in place. And then otherwise, with this, you can see here, I forgot to show that I went ahead and finished rolling down my neckline, and it ends right above that last eyelet stitch. And so we come up here and pull this fully together. You can also leave them a little bit unlaced at the top. That is pictured in some of it, kind of like unbuttoning your shirt to release some heat. And then because we have that top one, it's gonna these two top ones are at the same height. It's going to end a little bit differently, but it holds it together really well, and it doesn't, otherwise your neckline can shift if you continue the spiral lacing. But having your ending lacings being horizontal and equal to each other kind of helps hold your neckline together. And then what you do is you just tie a knot here, And however you want to tie it. And then because I keep my tapestry needle on here, which is really quite dangerous, I tuck in the last remaining bit of my thread, and then I just kind of take a few stitches with the needle into the neckline where it's rolled down, and that holds the needle in place and fairly safe, and yeah, it keeps the thread in place as well that's tucked in here. So there we have it. We are done. I'm gonna finish putting on the rest of my bits and go for a photo shoot.